Could the person who took Nancy Guthrie be living just streets away, watching the news coverage, blending in, going to work every Monday morning like nothing ever happened, when law enforcement already has camera footage of a suspect standing at Nancy's front door? Why, after 50 days, is that person still walking free? And is this investigation genuinely still alive? Or are authorities carefully, quietly managing the narrative while this case slips into the dark? Hey guys, welcome back. Thank you for being here, and if you are new, please subscribe. What I am about to tell you matters. Day 50. I have been covering missing persons cases for years, and I will tell you straight. Day 50 without a body, without a ransom call, without an arrest, without a single public lead, that is not just a number. That is the alarm. That is the sound of a case that could disappear into silence if people stop paying attention. And we are not going to let that happen. In the last 24 hours, two things have broken open in this investigation. The Guthrie family released an official statement, and inside that statement, buried almost casually, is a date that nobody has ever mentioned before. A date that completely reframes what we thought we knew about the timeline of this crime. And Sheriff Nanos gave a local radio interview where he was relaxed, comfortable, and unguarded, and said things that raised more questions than they answered. I am going to take you through both, piece by piece, because the details here are everything. Let's start with the family. For weeks, silence. Savannah had posted those raw, shaking videos on Instagram, begging the public for help, her voice cracking, and then it just stopped. The family was photographed crying at the memorial outside Nancy's home. Then Savannah flew back to New York. Nothing. Until now. The new statement says the family remains deeply grateful for the outpouring from neighbors, friends, and the people of Tucson. It says they continue to believe that it is Tucsonians and the greater Southern Arizona community who hold the key to finding resolution. And then it says something that hit me hard. Someone knows something. That word, Tucsonians, is not filler. It is not a polite gesture to the local community. That word is a message. Every law enforcement source I have spoken to over the course of this investigation keeps landing on the same theory. Whoever did this is from Tucson. They are local, they know the streets, they know the neighborhood. They may have known Nancy. Remember the first two police raids? Both were on local residents. The FBI does not raid local homes on a guess. And now the family, guided by federal investigators, is putting it into writing. The person responsible for Nancy's disappearance is likely still in that city. They may have driven past the memorial flowers. They may have watched the candlelight vigil from a distance. They may be someone whose face you recognize. That is not speculation. That is where this investigation is pointing. But none of that prepared me for what came next in the statement. The family asked the public to search their memories around two specific windows of time: January 31st and the early morning hours of February 1st, the night Nancy was taken. That makes sense. But then they added a second date, the late evening of January 11th. January 11th. I want you to feel the weight of that date, because it has never appeared anywhere before, not in a press conference, not in a police statement, not in any interview. This is the first time it has surfaced publicly. And January 11th was not close to the abduction. It was 3 full weeks before Nancy disappeared. Here is what I have been told by neighbors who were visited by FBI agents in the days after Nancy vanished. When those agents knocked on doors and asked for camera footage, they were not just asking about January 31st. They were specifically asking about January 11th. They wanted to know if anyone saw something unusual that night. A car parked too long, a figure on the street, anything. January 11th was a Sunday. Now look at the other date investigators flagged. January 24th. Also a weekend, a Saturday. And Nancy herself was taken in the early hours of a Sunday morning. Every single point of suspicious activity in this investigation clusters around the weekend. Someone was visiting that neighborhood on Sundays and Saturdays, watching, studying, learning the patterns of that house, weeks before they made their move. That is not a crime of opportunity. That is premeditated. That is calculated. That is someone who lives close enough to return casually, repeatedly, without drawing attention. Someone with a regular weekday life who used their free time to plan this. The FBI approved every word of that family statement before it was released. Every date in it is there because investigators want someone in Tucson to remember something. January 11th is not a footnote, it is a thread. And if you pull it hard enough, this whole thing unravels. Then came the line I have not been able to stop thinking about since I read it. The family wrote that they want to celebrate Nancy's beautiful and courageous life, but they cannot do that until she is brought to a final place of rest. A final place of rest. Read that again slowly. This family is not talking about a rescue anymore. They are not talking about finding Nancy at a hotel or a hospital or a safe house somewhere. They are talking about bringing her home to be buried. They are grieving a woman they have not yet been allowed to grieve. 50 days, no ransom, no contact, no sign of life. They have crossed a threshold in their own hearts, and that statement is the evidence of it. It is one of the saddest things I have ever had to read out loud in this work. Now let's talk about Sheriff Nanos, because this interview on KVIA radio told me a great deal. Away from national cameras, in a friendly local setting with a host who was not going to push him hard, Nanos relaxed. And in that relaxed state, the cracks showed. When asked about the investigation, he immediately moved to distance himself from it. He said he is not the investigator on this case, that he manages the department, that his role is to protect his team. I have interviewed dozens of law enforcement leaders over the years. Not one of them has ever opened with that. You lead by saying the buck stops with you. You do not lead by explaining that someone else is actually responsible. That deflection was notable. He also claimed his department has made no errors in this investigation. That is a hard claim to defend, because in earlier interviews, Nanos himself suggested the crime scene may have been released too soon. He has walked that back completely now. The story has been cleaned up. Then came the Google Nest footage. And this is where my frustration peaked. Multiple networks have independently confirmed what my own sources have told me. The two photos from Nancy's front door camera, one showing a man with a backpack, one without, were captured on 2 different days. 2 separate visits to that house. 2 separate moments of a suspect standing at Nancy Guthrie's door. That is not a minor detail. That changes the entire profile of this crime. But on the radio, Nanos said there is nothing in front of them showing a timestamp or date marker confirming the photos are from different times. He said it flatly, like it settles the matter. It does not settle anything. The FBI retrieved that footage digitally. Digital files do not exist without metadata. There is a timestamp. There is a record. Either the sheriff does not have access to what the FBI knows about that footage, which is its own serious problem, or he is deliberately holding that information back to protect the investigation from being compromised. Whatever the reason, the gap between what official sources are saying and what every credible reporter covering this story is hearing from the inside, that gap is getting wider, and the public notices. When the host asked if this was becoming a cold case, Nanos said, "Absolutely not. Not even close. I believe that part. DNA is still being processed. Labs are still working. This has not gone dark." But then he did something that genuinely unsettled me. He brought up the Isabel Celis case, a 6-year-old girl taken from her bedroom in Tucson in 2012, and used it as a reference point. His point was that resolution in that case took 10 years. 10 years. I do not know if he meant that as reassurance or as a warning. Either way, it landed like a stone. Nancy's daughters should not have to spend a decade waiting for answers. Nobody should. My focus is not on the recall effort targeting Nanos right now, though that story is developing. My focus is Nancy, her family, the truth they are owed. January 11th is where this case lives right now. That Sunday night, 3 weeks before Nancy was taken, someone stood near her home. Someone made a decision. someone in Tucson knows exactly who that was and may not even realize what they saw. I have expert interviews coming this week, and I will bring you everything as it develops. Tell me what you think in the comments. Do you believe the suspect is local? And what do you make of the sheriff's repeated evasiveness around that camera footage? Stay subscribed, stay with me, because 50 days in, Nancy Guthrie still deserves the truth, and we are not done looking for it.